in the world we live in, the electronics component industry, it's just not there. So, you
Yeah.
put up two identical suppliers, right?
Yeah.
They can look at identical features. They can throw in identical warranties. And does that mean the products are the same? Absolutely not. They're miles apart. One could be a low cost supplier driven primarily by giving low price, and one could be a performance based supplier that's got value, that's used a higher design criteria and everything else.
Yeah.
And you think about engineers today and the way they shop. This is what keeps me up at night.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership skills in the electronics manufacturing industry? Join Sannah Vinding on a transformative journey as she unlocks the key to exceptional leadership in this dynamic field. Discover invaluable strategies, emerging trends, and best practices through expert perspectives and insightful interviews. This podcast is your ultimate resource for gaining a competitive edge, staying ahead of the curve, and shaping the future. Tune in now and unlock the secrets to leadership success in the world of electronics manufacturing.
Welcome to Mind Innovation Leadership Podcast, empowering leadership excellence in the manufacturing industry. I'm your host, Sannah Vinding, and I'm excited to be here today. I want to introduce today's guest, Tom Richard. He's a dynamic innovator, accomplished international sales and marketing executive renowned for his deep understanding of Japanese business culture. Tom excels in navigating diverse business environments and continues to drive growth and deliver outstanding results. Currently serving as the Executive Vice President of Sales and Marketing at TTK Lambda. Welcome, Tom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Welcome. Thank you, Sannah. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, let's dive into it. So I want to know more about, because you've been in the industry for a long time. And I want to know, what's your secret or your passion about the industry, and how do you stay relevant as well in the industry?
Good question. So, this is an exciting industry to be in, right? If you look at where it's gone from, the last 20 years or so. I started as a young design engineer, designing in the cubicle, as many out there trying to sell to, and migrated from engineering to business development, to sales, to marketing. And you look at this industry, 10 or 15 years ago, Coke machines were gravity fed. Today they use electronics.
Yeah.
They've got LED lighting. Coffee machines would drip coffee. Today you've got high-tech electronics and coffee machines. Fryers that were very simple in fast food restaurants today have sophisticated electronics to keep them from catching fire, right?
Yeah.
And you look at the evolution in technology and medicine, and it's amazing. So it's a great industry to be in. Robotics have become everywhere, right? And that is what really excites you today. If there's any industry you could pick today, I would say this is one of the more exciting industries, because it's just growing rapidly in the use of electronics in ordinary devices, right?
Yeah.
And really making things very interesting. So,
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's good. I can see you already the one pointing out things or devices or equipment. If you see something new, right? You will tell your whole family what's new
today, and you just look at it. You don't want to be the next, blockbuster, right? You've got to continue to innovate yourself, right?
Yeah.
There was a time I gave a presentation and talked about what is important in this industry is the curiosity to learn, to always explore, because things are changing very rapidly. Inflection points in communication and just the technology are changing everything we do. So if you don't want to learn, this is not the industry to be in. But if you got a lot of curiosity, this is the place to be, right? So,
definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So let's dive into the sales process. What have changed, right? So if you could go deeper and looking at back and saying maybe how an engineer was working, like if you compare like 5 years ago, and saying how does the world look like now in a more hybrid world? How will you describe it?
Think about it. Prior to the pandemic, engineers were, I like to say, there was an article I wrote, huddled in the cubicles, right? They were under intense pressure to do what? To develop projects, with blazing speed, innovation. Cost was, paramount, right? In their designs. Managers were looming with guns over their heads. And then this giant inflection point in the industry called the pandemic hits, right? And those same poor engineers that were sitting in the cubicles that valued, salespeople with intelligence and knowledge that could bring roadmaps or help them with, anything in their technology are now working in their, offices at home or in their basements, right? Absent from that value of a salesperson. And so, there was a big glut there where, you miss that whole piece. So how do you reach these engineers today? Now they're slowly coming back into the offices, but even, the old school of a sales manager traveling with local representatives and visiting accounts is not always receptive today. People have developed this new hybrid model, right?
Yeah.
Some work at home a few days, some like to work in the office, and you visit customers and you go in there and you had a meeting scheduled with 8 people. You get in there and only 2 show up, and the other 6 want to join via Teams call. You have to adapt to this changing style of selling and informing, and it is a challenge to salespeople because usually we're personable, we're one-on-one or one-on-4, and we love to tell our story about our technology and our roadmaps, and these same engineers, by the way, that were just prior to the pandemic in the cubicle struggling to get projects done on time are no different today. They're struggling to get projects done on time. They're hungry for information. It's just different. It's there's no longer an office they go to every day. And, a good salesperson, I guess, is more valued than ever today to find different ways to reach out, educate, and inform these salespeople. And therein lies the challenge, because there's no cookie cutter approach that works for any one style, right?
No.
Or any one company. So that places the big challenge or conundrum ahead for everybody in our industry. And that's what differentiates great salespeople from good salespeople, right? And how do they reach and inform these engineers and get advice and have problems? I mean, years ago, I was at an ERA conference and they had a bunch of young engineers on the stage. And it's funny because older, a little bit generation, younger out there. And one of the comments they gave us was, they don't want to talk to salespeople, right? They said, they don't want you to visit, text me maybe, but this. But then, on the same token, they said, but if they have a problem, they want you receptive and in their office in hours, right? Because they need that support. So that is a key piece of what is still important back then and still today. But the challenge is how to get there and understand it and connect, right? With all that. So
so it's making sure, right, to be visible in that whole sales funnel. So when the engineer needs you, right, then they will think of you and then you will be there. So there's a lot of...
You want to be in the invoke set, right? So you don't say, I need an adhesive strip, do you? No, you say, I need a Band-Aid, right? So you're trying to get engineers to think that same way about your brand, your company, and even you as an individual, right? I need Joe. He's the guy. He gets things done. Or I need Susie. She's the right one. So these are the things you're striving for, is like the old sales term, a trusted advisor. You want to be that person they can trust. Right? Trust is the key element in sales. Without that, everything else is lost, in my opinion. So
So let's talk about how to provide value into the product that you're selling or stand behind. So if you compare to Amazon, and maybe it's not apples to apples to compare to Amazon in this, but I still want to do it, because on Amazon you can see the value that's behind it is the rating, the customer who bought it. That gives you some kind of understanding of what this product is providing as a value. How do you mirror that into the electronic industry? Because we don't have like a rating, right? Or a comment box.
Yeah, that's a very challenging, and there was a article written years ago. I mean, it's sort of a little bit of a DigiKey Mauser model, relationship marketing versus performance-based marketing. So that's a challenge. Okay, Amazon is performance-based. You go on a site and they have the product, they have the reasonable price, they have some technical information, whatever it is, and you can order it and get it delivered the next day. A little bit of the model that both DigiKey and Mauser also provide. in the industry. But what is really challenging is, you know, things all look equal, right? The electronic industry hasn't adapted that, I guess, rating-based system where, you could have reviews by customers for Amazon. In the world we live in, the electronics component industry, it's just not there. So, you
Yeah.
can put up two identical suppliers, right?
Yeah.
They can look at identical features. They can throw in identical warranties. And does that mean the products are the same? Absolutely not. They're miles apart. One could be a low cost supplier driven primarily by giving low price, and one could be a performance based supplier that's got value, that's used a higher design criteria and everything else.
Yeah.
And you think about engineers today and the way they shop. This is what keeps me up at night. So you think about it. You used to be able to have lunch and learns or go visit customers years ago.
Yeah.
And you'd explore your technology. You'd have that relationship-based marketing. You'd be in there telling them about, what were the value and benefits of your product. And today, what is that engineer doing? He's blazing through the internet at 11 o'clock at night, popping up on these sites, pulling up the products, doing comparisons. And the other challenge is that many times these folks that are doing it, let's say it's an electrical, and let's say it's power related, they may be a hardware engineer that's mechanical, right? And
Yeah.
don't have the depth knowledge to understand all the the differences between the two products, and they're making decisions at 11 o'clock at night with no advice from a trusted advisor or salesperson.
Yeah.
So that does keep me up at night, and quite frankly, it's a challenge. And I think everybody that's a value-based supplier is challenged to find out, how do you differentiate the value of your product on a website at 11 o'clock at night, where
Yeah.
where human interface and relationship-based marketing isn't there. Okay, that is a real challenge for companies that are value-based. Again, it benefits the low-cost base, but the value base, and there are plenty of great value-based suppliers out there in our industry.
Yeah.
It does present a challenge. There's no easy answer to that. I mean, you could do things like make tie your product to videos, right? The TikTok generation, right? So long as
Yeah.
your video is not more than a couple of minutes, you can possibly do an educational form and say, well, here, this is our product, and here are the values you need to look at, or the things you need to consider
Yeah.
before choosing a product. But absent of that, we are challenged. It does keep us up at night on what can we do to differentiate value of two products that look very similar to an engineer shopping at, let's say, 11 o'clock at night. So yes, you hit a core button there that all marketers and salespeople of value-based companies are struggling with today.
Yeah. And you see different areas, right, of how companies or manufacturing companies have from scale to 1 to 100, right? Because there's some that will only have the picture of the product, right? And maybe a data sheet, or maybe they don't have a data sheet. And then you have the whole full, where you have a whole parametric search where you can do more comparison. And it's so important now when you're saying when engineers are searching, right? That even though you can go to the mouse or you can go to the DigiKeys and get information as well, a lot of times the engineer will go to the manufacturer's website to get all the information and search for it. So it's important that every manufacturer actually makes sure and spend money on their website to keep up with the evolution of websites, right?
And well, that's a fantastic point. I think today the appetite for information is great. So it exactly is a challenge for us here, right? I mean, one of the things though a website can do is provide an abundance of information, right? That, I think, that is key. There is a differentiator. There's a lot of different ways you can differentiate your product on your website, using the EDA tools, whether Ultra Librarian or Snap EDA. All the different test reports you need, all the different EMC reports you need. There is value through a website, but again, you've got to get the engineer to go through that journey of an engineer to get to your website, right? And it's sort of like baiting the hook to bring them in. right? And
Yeah.
usually they're coming through one of the larger distributors. We talked about the high service, whether it's Mauser, DigiKey, RS, Avnet, Arrow. And the trick is, how do you differentiate you, get that hook to get them into your website, where
Yeah.
you do provide a repository of everything they can ask for. That is one little value you can provide. So
yeah, and I think it's also important to think about the clicks, right? How many clicks to get to the information.
right.
So it's a balance about that, and also have really value added content on the website, so you can keep the engineer finding interesting, either if it's articles or if it's new product introductions, or get them to the right product if they didn't click it on the first one when they get to the website. So there's it's a whole menu, right, of options that you need to offer.
I think a key piece today is you look at the roles engineers are playing. They're not always, a mechanical engineer for a mechanical, or an electrical engineer for an electrical. So if you can make your website informative, educational, right?
Yeah.
That may help these people in their journey in choosing and designing a product, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really important, because they are not always as informed. I mean, you look at where the industry was, you talk about it, right? Go back 15 years ago, the major manufacturers, whether they're GE Healthcare or a Keysight, would have like a power expert, somebody with either a bachelor or a master's in electrical engineering, managing the hardware.
Yeah.
And with the cost cutting initiatives, and the ability to the emphasis on keeping yourself competitive, some of these companies don't have those positions anymore. And so therefore, the engineers are more reliant on the manufacturers, the distributors, or the representatives to provide this information, educate, train, and inform.
Yeah.
So it presents a challenge, but it also presents an opportunity, right?
Yeah, definitely. So that touch a little bit, how to learn, right? And how do you educate the engineers? So I want to ask you, how do you learn?
Yeah, there's lots of ways. So, a buddy of mine named Graham, who's pretty prolific in the industry, I listened to him. There's many ways to learn. You can read, technical articles, blogs, but I like to get up in the morning, grab my cup of coffee to make sure we all say that properly. And maybe open up LinkedIn and look for interesting articles.
Yeah.
And kind of browse LinkedIn with my cup of coffee in the morning. And there's some great content on there you can read and learn. You can not only keep up with your competitive environment, see what's going on in the industry, but there's some folks that, Michael Knight, for instance, writes some great articles. And,
Yeah.
if you come across these, you go, all right, well, I'm either going to read it right now, save it, or come back and read it. But there are others in the industry that have written great things. And then in the evening, just at the other end, that Graham would say, in the evening, you grab a glass of wine, 9 o'clock, right? Nothing's good on TV. You do the same thing. You can grab that LinkedIn and you start scrolling. And, as long as it stays as a tool to educate and inform, I think it's a power. There's a power to that community on LinkedIn. So that's just one way to stay informed, but there's just many other ways. I mean, look, we're just coming off the ECIA executive conference. Another great way to learn and inform, right? You go to that conference, you listen to the speakers, you take away takeaways, or if you go to the ERA conference in February, you listen, you take takeaways. This industry, you have to have curiosity, but you also have to have an appetite to continue to learn, because things are changing so fast, right?
Yeah.
The speed of change in this industry keeps growing faster and faster.
Yeah. How do you then take it and make sure, that your organization or your team is learning at the same pace that you're learning?
Oh, yeah, good. You challenge them, right? I mean, many of the folks that work with me go to these conferences because I am sitting as more of the elder in the group, right, at this stage. Not done with my career, but more of an elder. I like to bring in the young, that youthful energy. You can meet the right folks who also embody that same spirit of curiosity to learn. I think it's great, when you get them in here and take them to these conferences, are great vehicles for them to discover, right? Also, whenever I come across a great article, whether it's on LinkedIn or I read it, in the Wall Street Journal or any other vehicle that you can catch informative topics, the first thing I do is I send it to everybody.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm known to do in the company at TDK Lambda is if I read a good book. The Challenger Sale was a great example, right? So I read this book and said, damn, this is a damn good book, right? And I bought everybody in the team the book, wrote them a personal note and said, I suggest you read this. Now, I don't think everybody read the book. I found out that others could go online quickly and get the crypt notes, and cheat. I said, we're going to bring it up on a call just so that everybody can chat about the values of what you saw in this book. But
Yeah.
these are just different ways of learning. I love when anybody new comes on board the company. I usually send them a book that I've read or two with a note. And I'm saying, we'll talk about it in about 6 months. I don't want any pressure, right? But there are some great things to read out there. The Jab, 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 Right Hook, is another great book, right? Talking about the marketing. That one is philosophically the way I believe all communication should be, right?
Yeah.
You educate, you educate, you educate, and then you throw a hook and then you throw your product in there, right? Don't lead with your products. There's a lot of great, and then listening to people in the industry like Glenn Smith, right? He one time was talking to me and his view was, we're talking about features and benefits and features and benefits. And he goes, okay, those are nice. He goes, what problems are you solving with your product? And I sat back and I go, I don't know. I said, I can think about that for a second here.
Yeah.
Well, why did you create the product? What problem are you solving for an engineer? And I sat back and said, all right, that's going to be in our marketing wheelhouse in TDK Lambda. Whenever we introduce a product, why do we introduce it? What problems are we solving? And I love that phrase,
Yeah.
So.
And that's the whole storytelling, right? That makes it easier as well when you can actually answer that.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot there, and you look at it, right, and it changes your view on the way to pitch a product, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like I've got blah blah blah, Class BMI. I am great at this. I am great at that. And the engineer who maybe is a software engineer says, okay, that's important, but I don't understand what is the value. Well, you can put this in a class. This Class B can be put in a plastic enclosure and still meet your emissions. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
so you say, I can design this in a plastic enclosure, which I was doing, and still meet the emissions requirements of my system if it's this. That's the problem you're solving. So you have to think that way when you're pitching a product or outlining its market attributes, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good one. Well, I want to touch a little about the industry as well and saying, what kind of lessons, if you look back, had the industry learned over the recent years? And we touch a little bit on how, how to sell, but if you look zooming further out, what if you can sum it up?
Well, this industry has gone through a myriad of inflection points, changes, right? You had the tariff wars. Prior to that, you had just economic slumps. Then you had the pandemic, the supply chain crisis. One of the things companies have got to be is resilient, right? I know that salespeople have to be resilient. That's a key thing. You have to adapt to change, right?
Yeah.
Because, the war in Ukraine came and you said, okay, and then we were going to have a sales meeting with a select group of people in Israel in November. Well, that's not going to happen. Now there's a war in Israel, right? So you've got to adapt to change. We were going to educate a new group of young people on a new product category. So what are we going to do now? How are we going to pivot from that event? And then if you look even more forward, highlighted at this recent ECIA conference was the role that AI might play in the way we sell, in the way we communicate. When we were listening to that a little bit and we stepped back, there's a much greater impact it can have. I mean, folks are a little nervous with like Chat GDP and stuff like that because, because it's a public domain and anything you put into it is now public. But there's also a paid version that can go behind your firewall that one can use. and maybe enhance your collection of information to questions by customers. I think that AI will have a big impact on
Yeah.
how we take reams of technical information and kind of funnel it down so that it's just like a point to answer the questions or help the person. It's sort of what they're doing with the viruses, and all the ways when you go to the doctor and you've got a cold, he gives you a
Yeah.
general anesthesia to help you out. And they're working to figure out today how to make that like precision just for the exact virus you have. I think you step back and say, customers come in with questions and we give them lots of answers that are general that maybe doesn't answer their specific question. With the right embedded AI behind the scenes, we may be better to rally the information and be more precise in our answers. That is then, as an engineer sitting there, more value, right?
Yeah.
And then it says, oh, that's really what I wanted to know. All the other stuff was baloney. I didn't really care about that, but it was good. So I think that's going to be a big part of the future in our industry. It's
Yeah.
coming. It's got a little bit of time to mature, right? Let's not say that it will be here in a year, but if you're looking out 3 years, I think this will be a bigger part of all of our company's equations on how to enhance that value to customers, right? I mean, that's what we're looking for. How do we improve our value in selling? So,
Yeah. And then that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? With the value adding. So being able
sure.
to do that is also going to help that engineer looking for, to solve their challenge, right? So the faster and the more
Absolutely.
efficient you can do it, it solves it and they will be happy.
It boils down to what problem are we solving for the engineer, right? If we can figure that out, right, we've added value.
Then we're happy. Then you can sleep again. No, but you said I'll keep you up at night, right? No. So if somebody like a colleague, maybe younger colleague, then want to sell in the industry, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was fortunate, right? I came into this industry. I wanted to be a MacGyver. I didn't want to be a salesperson. I did not want to be a marketing person. I wanted to be MacGyver. I wanted to take the bubblegum wrap, make something, put things together. Curiosity and learning, right? On what makes electronics tick. Spending a couple of years on the bench, really working to design, going through all the troubles and challenges that design engineers have. I mean, when you think about it today, right? Who can relate better to an engineer on the bench or in their home office who's under intense pressure to get a project done on time, under budget, and achieve this than somebody who's actually been in that role, right? Before you get into the sales and marketing role, and then you can talk the language. You can express, sympathy, but almost empathy in that, yes, we've both been there. Now I'm a little older. Let me give you the tools and the information you need to be successful. I think it's a key part of in this industry. There's a strong piece to have that technical background as you migrate up the journey of an engineer to selling, right? And so I would look for folks who come into this industry, spend some time on the bench, go through, develop some scar tissue. That will make you stronger long term and make you better and more informed on how to grow in this industry. Yeah,
definitely. And you also, the whole communication, right, will help you as well, because you've been sitting in that chair. So that will help.
Feel the pain. Somebody can say something. I mean, I love when folks say to me, I'm having troubles with my admissions in EMC or EMI. And I go, I can feel that pain. Have you ever sat in a cold metal room trying to solve EMC issues for hours? Yes. Okay. Now I know that you don't want to be there either. Let me figure out how we can work together to get you a solution to solve this problem. Right. Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. So if you have to look back and say, okay, how could you give yourself an advice like 10 years ago? What kind of advice would that be?
I think I was too conservative. Why? I don't know why, but take the adventure, right? What advice would I have? The world is global today. There's no longer, you're no longer, just regional or whatever state-wise. You're dealing today with international companies,
Yeah.
whether Japanese, European, Chinese, and if I had the advice, and looking back, and someone said this to me once before, I said, I wish I would have worked for a company and that company would have said, I'd like you to go work out of our Japan office for 2 years and then maybe go work out of our European office for 2 years and gain a little more global perspective of how this global world interconnects in technology. That would be the advice I'd give myself. I would say, don't be too conservative. Don't take the safe route. Take a little risk and go, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that would be my advice to myself 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, that's a good advice. I like when you're saying the global world, because there's also the culture, right, in the different teams. And you need to respect and understand and how to communicate still when you are in a global world and you have offices all over. You have to, it's a fun challenge, I think. But
it is. I mean, each culture is blended in America. I mean, the strength of the American industry is the diversity. There is the diverse group. If you traveled into San Jose and you were ever unsure of the youthful element and where we're going, and you see some of these young people designing some of the most amazing stuff and the diverse cultures and everything else, you walk away with a little bit more confidence that there are some good people in this world. They're doing some great things, and it's not just it's a diversity of all the different cultures melting in, all the different component manufacturers melting in, and that is an inherent strength that I don't think any country can compete with America on. That's our unique strength, our secret formula, if you want to call it.
I agree. So if any of the listener wants to reach out to you, how can they connect with you?
Easiest way is LinkedIn, I guess. LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not on LinkedIn every single day, every minute. I'm definitely in the morning when I grab my cup of coffee, and I'm definitely like to do it in the evenings, not every evening when I grab a good glass of red wine. And I'm always out listening. I'm there. Absolutely.
Perfect.
That's
perfect.
Cool.
I'll put it in the show notes, and I'll also put it on the website on the episode page on mindinnovation.com. So you will be easy to find. So Tom, thank you so much. I think now this chat was great. I think the whole value adding and also touching on the AI, because there's something there we need to look out for, right? We need to be prepared. And again, and what we talked about, adapting to that change. You cannot just sit still and saying, oh, that's it, no more updates to the website. You have to change, right? Everyone has to do that.
It is a part. I mean, to close, you look at two great folks, whether it's Jim Collins in Good to Great or Andy Grove, right? And they use this word paranoia, productive paranoia. Only the paranoid survive, but the paranoia drives change in people inherently, and that is definitely key, right? To be successful. So, thank you.
If you like Mind Innovation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share the show wherever you get your podcast. You can follow Sannah Vinding and Mind Innovation on Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and make sure to check out mindinnovation.com. Stay curious and keep learning. See you next time.